It is Dallas Cowboys Executive Vice President Stephen Jones. Stephen, how are we feeling today, man?
Oh, we're just grinding through it. Obviously, a tough one against the Chargers, but we got to get right to work. We got the Commanders coming up here Thursday on a short week.
Yeah, Stephen, yesterday Jerry he said, we were just kind of discussing this. He was asked if the organization underachieved. And he pretty much said, yes, there are a lot of different areas. What area do you think the organization underachieved the most?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, we've set out a goal every year to win our division and, get in the playoffs. And that's where we underachieved. We really felt like, we had a team, had players, especially down the home stretch, that we could get the job done. And, we came up short. And obviously, this year our offense had their moments where, we've really looked good, for the most part, but, hadn't been consistent, didn't protect the ball as well as we would have liked. If you look at it as a whole up and through, 15 games, I'd have to say that's where that is. Obviously, the big disappointment's been our defense. And, we just hadn't been able to, get an identity and, do the things that we need to do to win football games, and consequently put a lot of pressure on the offense. But and then on special teams, I'd say we're adequate at best. We hadn't been able to get turf loose, so just as a whole, we hadn't made the plays and done the things we need to do. To win the games it takes to win a division and get in the playoffs.
When we've been discussing Eberflus and where things stand with him, I'm always curious, how do you weigh continuity versus talent and coaching as this thing goes along? Does continuity carry a lot of weight for you?
I think it's a full body of work. You measure everything, and certainly that's what we'll do at the end of the year. We'll take a look at at everything. Whether it's personnel, whether it's the coaching, whether it's continuity and what that would play going forward. Obviously, with 3 changes in 3 years and not having the type of results we've wanted the last couple of years, we've just got to take the full body of work in. We'll certainly do that when this season's over.
Also, this is kind of a philosophy thing. Sometimes hires are made for established success in the past, and then sometimes fresh ideas are necessary. Does that go back and forth, or is there one you prefer over the other?
Yeah, I think, it's everything. I go back, I'm overusing the term full body of work, but you've got to look at everything. I think, one of the more important things for us, too, in this age of, when you get players and you pay players, you have those players, you also got to customize the defense to your most talented guys. Certainly, we've put a lot of resources into our defensive line. We've got a young up-and-coming player in Easy that, we really think, has a chance, has a bright future. Obviously, we love Overshown. It's unfortunate there. He had a concussion playing hard and competing, and, going to be probably hard for him to play on a short week, hard for him to get through the protocol. But, that plays a big role, too. It's just making sure that, we're running the scheme that complements our players' skill sets the best, because there's no question we have some pieces in place, but we also have to utilize, those guys to the best of their skills, and got to come up with the right system that fits what they do best.
Stephen, how do you think Trayvon Diggs looked in his return to the lineup? And you mentioned in the process of him ramping back up, you needed to see the right things in practice and whatnot. What did you think that you saw last week that led to him getting activated again?
Well, the biggest thing is he gave himself a chance with, making sure, that he was, in all the meetings, in all the practices, making everything 100% attendance. A lot of it had been, with his injuries and stuff, he wasn't able to make some practices. And, that happens during the course of the season. He's not the only one who's had that happen, but we really think he plays his best when he's, certainly able to practice day in and day out, and he was able to do that. And, he hadn't played football, in 7-8 weeks. So, certainly you're going to have to knock the rust off when you come back, but hopefully he'll have another great short week here, and we'll only get better.
Did the Deron Bland injury play any factor in activating him, or did you just see enough and decide it was time to pull the trigger?
I think it was time. He deserved the right to get out there and play, and he's obviously a talented guy who's had some great years in the NFL, and I think he did everything the right way last week, and met the standard that Coach Schottenheimer and the defensive staff expect, and I think he deserved to be up, and certainly, obviously, not having Bland and Carson played. That was not helpful either in terms of not having those guys out there. But I think he deserved to come up and play, and I think he'll have another good week of practice, and hopefully he'll knock a little rust off and continue to improve.
A lot of discussion right now, Stephen, about Tyler Smith playing left tackle out there, and I'm just kind of curious because there's some back and forth on, hey, should we go ahead and move him out to left tackle in that discussion? Is that even a thought for you guys, or is that just a, hey, we had to do something to protect Dak this week?
Well, we had to protect Dak. Obviously, we were going against one of the top defenses in the league, and they get great pressure. And, Nate Thomas is a young guy who, has a bright future for us. And certainly we'll, probably get Tyler Guyton back. If not this year, he'll be ready to go next year. And he was really coming on strong. So, what we'll do is, as we always do in the offensive line, is to put the best five players out there. Certainly Tyler Smith stepped up in a big way. He never blinked, and I thought did a hell of a job out there at left tackle against the Chargers.
But as far as going forward and for his career, you see him as a all-pro left guard?
We just that'll be something we evaluate. It'll be, as into every year you look at what's going to make you the very best football team. Obviously he's an all-pro left guard that certainly we wanted to keep around and paid him to be the best in the business. And certainly he's showing what else makes you very valuable on a football team is his versatility. And obviously played left tackle in college. He's played left tackle before. And it's great to have a guy like that who's got that kind of versatility.
Stephen Jones joining us here on 105.3 The Fan. I do want to go back to Matt Eberflus just a little bit because he did move up to the coach's box for this game and called plays from there. What difference do you see when a coach starts calling plays from the aerial view as opposed to the sideline? Do you notice any difference? Is it just a personal preference thing to you?
A lot of times it's a personal preference. I'd say more times than not. I've had coaches over the years. We've had coaches that like to be down on the sideline. We've also had them that like to call from the box because you see more. I think obviously we're experimenting there a little bit to see, especially with our struggles on defense, is there maybe a better way that, for Coach Eberflus, he and Shotty talked about it and thought that would be a good move. I'm sure they'll figure out what's best for this week, and we'll go from there.
It was you got 2 firsts, but then you also have a bit of a hole in the next couple of rounds. Do you feel like you're going to need to go out and add some draft capital in order to fill the variety of needs on your defense that you need?
We'll just see how the draft falls. That's obviously, as we do our work and we start to work on our board and see where we think, some of the better parts of the draft are to be, then you can certainly do some maneuvering around. If you want to move down in the first, obviously your most values are those first-round picks, and you can end up with a later first and a second and a third, or a later first and a second and fourth. I mean, there's a lot of ways to maneuver, and certainly as we start to strategize and get our board up and see what we think, we really need to do as we move forward, we'll certainly challenge ourselves to do everything we can to get our picks in the best spot, to get the best players we can to make us better.
And, Stephen, I know we talked a little bit about Easy a little bit, but it was evident yesterday that the pass rush was a struggle. Do you feel like you're in a better position having added Quinn in and those tackles in the middle? Do you feel like you're in a better position to add a pass rusher in the offseason?
Sure. I think, obviously that's something we'll look at. We'll look at the whole thing there in terms of how we're going about getting pressure. There's lots of ways to get pressure. Look around the league, and there, some people do it with like the team we played the week before, Minnesota. Flores goes about it in a different way. We'll certainly see what complements our defense and the players we have and the players we think we might could add to make us better going forward. We'll take a long, hard look at that.
Stephen, Jerry was asked after the game yesterday about the 30-year Super Bowl drought, and he said, "I'll admit that the Cowboys management has played a big role." And he said, "I'm very disappointed in the way we're structured, and my role puts us here tonight. I'm tremendously disappointed." What's your point of view on management's role and the structure of this team?
I think everybody gets, plays the role in the results, and whether that's ownership, whether that's management, everybody has a hand in it, and we certainly take responsibility as much as we would, coaching or players or anybody, and we feel at the end of the day it starts at the top, and that's Jerry and myself, and we take that responsibility.
I know yesterday also there was conversation, and he said the Cowboys might, in the near next year future, Cowboys might play in Mexico. Would you welcome a game across the border?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's what, obviously it's a big initiative of the league is to grow globally. We hadn't used our home game yet. We certainly, at some point, we have to take our turn doing that. We hadn't been the visiting team because most teams protect us and keep us, they want us playing at their home stadiums. So we haven't been able to go as a visiting team, but we're certainly on the docket to go in the next year or two as the home team. And, as part of that, you never know, there may be a situation where we go as a visiting 1 year and a home team the next.
And on the topic of cool and interesting types of games, you guys are playing on Christmas Day. But what's your feelings about getting another holiday that's just going to have Dallas Cowboys football stamped on it? And are you looking forward to getting another holiday, spending it with the family, watching the boys play?
Well, certainly those are certainly opportunities to go out and play well. We're going to be going against somebody who's we're close to in Dan Quinn, but anytime you gear up and you go against an FC East team, long-time rival in the Washington Commanders, you welcome that opportunity. And I know our guys, want to finish the season strong. We'd like to finish, not have that losing season, and we have the opportunity there in front of us. We've got to go. Starts against Washington and Dan Quinn. We know, how much a win means to him as well. So it'll be big. It'll be big, that it's on Christmas Day. People will be, after they have their Christmas time, will be watching games, and we feel fortunate to be a part of it.
You expect to see Dak out there for this one as well?
Absolutely. Our goal is to win the football game. What we focus on all week is the Washington Commanders and winning this football game. As I said, but our goal is to finish strong, and we got a chance to finish at 500 and avoid a losing season. And I know that's what we all as an organization would like to get accomplished.
Well, Stephen, we really appreciate your time. Wish you a Merry Christmas, and we'll catch up with you next week, good sir.
Merry Christmas to you guys as well. Take care.